Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Welcome to this Catalyst full moon forecast where we're going to look at our upcoming full moon in Libra. It will be directly conjunct the fixed star Spica. So we're going to go over some of that astrology and look at the main astrological themes for the second half of our lunar cycle. So from full moon to the end of the lunar cycle, leading up to our next new moon, which will be in the sign of Taurus. It'll be on April 27th. So our full moon will be on April 12th, 2025. So welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. If you're new here, thank you for taking the time to watch and to listen. This is part of a twice a month offering that Catalyst Energies has, the new and full moon forecasts. So before we dive into all of those things, astrology, just a few very quick announcements just so everybody is on the same page. And let's keep our fingers crossed that this recording actually is audible and doesn't freeze, because I've been having a lot of technical issues so far this morning getting this ready. So the only thing I would like to offer in terms of an announcement is that because I'm going to be referencing these particular readings throughout this forecast because they've turned out to be oh so relevant for the times ahead, is that for those who are part of my membership platform, it is currently through a third party called Subscribestar. It's kind of like Patreon. It's a third party site. You sign up, you subscribe to a monthly contribution, and that goes towards supporting this work, which is not monetized on these platforms, but it does also support things like administrative costs for continuing to have this business. So so far, it's been through Subscribestar, and by the end of April 2025, so by the end of this month, the plan, at least, barring any major events that would keep me from executing this, I'm going to be moving all membership content onto my website. So I have the option through Squarespace to create a members only site. Everything will be exactly the same, and you have the same price points and options for different tiers of subscription, but all of that content will be moving into one streamlined platform through my website, which is linked in the description box below. So for those of you who have been supporting me on Subscribestar and continue to do so, I thank you so much. That's actually helping me cover the costs of my website subscription, my domain, and ultimately to compensate my graphic designer / social media liaison person who I've been working with. And longer term plan is a full rebrand that I'm hoping will be launched by the next eclipse cycle, actually, which will be in September. So we'll see how that goes. But by the end of this month, all of that membership content will be moved hopefully to the website, and you can sign up there. Now, the reason I bring this up is because in the meantime, I have been offering one of the benefits of membership is regular energetic readings. So certainly the astrology is factored into it, but it's much more intuitive. I use a card reading and really tap more into pure intuitive messaging. So I've been offering that to my entire email list as of this month, and I will continue to do so until I make the switch over to the new membership site. So if you are interested in getting the next energy reading, which is a video just like this, except we do a card reading and I go into more of the intuitive messaging that has been coming through a variety of different means, right? Through my own dream state, through my own synchronicities, and really encourage people to tap into those same tools for themselves and provide some confirmation what we're going through collectively through the reading. So if you are interested, you can go to my website in the description box below, and the first thing that pops up on the homepage is to be able to get on the email list. And not only will those energy readings still be going out freely to that list for the rest of this month, but also too, you get kind of the first announcement of things when I offer sales, when I offer special reports, things like that. And periodically I will give free content to those on that email list. And it doesn't cost anything to sign up. You just do it. I don't spam you very often, if at all, maybe like 2 or 3 emails a month, and it's usually letting you know what's going on and if there's any exclusive content that I'm going to be offering that particular list, which I do sometimes. Now, the reason I'm also bringing that up is because the past 2 energy readings, I just released one yesterday, it's been incredibly relevant to what I'm going to be sharing for this upcoming full moon forecast. So it's a really great supplement to the astrology in terms of the work that I'm offering. So if you want to get signed up for the email list, you just go to the website in the description box below. If you are already on Subscribestar, just heads up, stay tuned, because that membership platform is going to be moving, and you can just move over, canceling Subscribestar, going to my website and signing up there, and you'll continue to get the same benefits that you're getting now. And I will continue to offer the first 30 days free when you sign up, so you'll have access to all of the content and the discount code as a subscriber or a member, a monthly member, and that is a percentage discount on everything in my store, minus the packages because they're already discounted. So that's my PSA. Let's just launch right into this upcoming full moon in Libra conjunct Spica. So it's not only a full moon in Libra. There's a couple things that are worth considering as we launch into this forecast. Number one, we should just remind ourselves that the beginning of this lunar cycle, the new moon, is and was a partial solar eclipse. So when we come to the full moon, the stage that we're at in our journey is about clarifying our purpose, right? That we fulfill our clarifying our purpose, and we fulfill it with that full illumination of the moon, right? Which represents our living soul. It represents our deep feelings coming to the surface, basically, when we get to a full moon. So the last full moon we had was eclipsed, right? So it was very intense, but also not fully illuminated, which will not be the case here. The fact that it's conjunct to the fixed star Spica says quite a bit. I mean, exactly conjunct, like sitting right on top of it. So we're going to go into a little bit of the astronomy, right? Show you in the actual sky itself what that's going to look like, what constellation it is, and go into a little bit of the fixed star astrology of Spica. It is a starseed origin. So for those of you who already know that you are a Spica starseed, either through other readers or from getting the starseed reading from me, then you already know what I'm going to say about it. But it is it's not common. There are other starseed origins that are fairly common amongst starseeds. A lot of Pleiadians, a lot of Orion, a lot of Sirius, not a lot of people from Spica, or not of starseeds, I should say. That have the frequency or the template from Spica. They're kind of rare, but it's because it's a very pure type of energy. And so this is a big activation for folks that are Spica starseeds. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And if you aren't sure, I mean, it's a great opportunity to get the starseed reading from me. And that looks at your natal chart, your progressions, and wraps all of that together into a very multidimensional pattern of you as an individual and as a soul, and the different starseed origins that factor into what's going on for you right now. So I'm going to talk about Spica. We'll certainly look at the chart over the next 2 weeks, but the other aspect, besides the fact that we are coming off a partial solar eclipse, knowing that what is illuminated for us to fulfill and to clarify our purpose with this full moon is still part of a cycle that is going to be much longer term, right? The 6-month eclipse cycle takes us into September. So even with this full illumination that will be much more immediate, much more seen, much more illuminated, right? It is also going to be part of something that we have intended and had activated with the eclipsed full moon, right? The new moon, right? The partial solar eclipse. That's going to be something that is going to emerge fully much more down the line, but we're going to feel things a lot more on the surface with this full moon. So besides the fact that we're still kind of woven into this eclipse cycle with this upcoming full moon, the fact that it's conjunct Spica. The other really big piece of this, in my opinion, actually there's a couple big pieces, but the other big piece of this is that the sun will be in a conjunction with Chiron, the wounded healer. And so this is an incredible healing moment here with this full moon. When the sun and Chiron meet, especially in the sign of Aries, especially considering the fact that many people are going through a Chiron return at their part of life right now, and also the U.S. natal chart is we're in the middle of a Chiron return as well. So this has multiple layers here of importance. The sun meeting Chiron tends to very much shine a light on those deep wounds. And in the sign of Aries, you're talking about wounds of self, the inner child, and ultimately it's going to bring up those wounds around our ability to embody within our very self everything we need to be fulfilled. And I do see that it's going to be very important to really face and lean into that discomfort and that activation of a healing process for all of us, because what it will illuminate is this capacity to really find what we're made of. Right? And that is something we're going to take with us over the course of the next 6 months through this particular eclipse cycle that is absolutely, overlapped with the equinox period as well. So lots to talk about. What I'd like to do first is just go into real quick, just as a review in case you aren't aware of this already. And if you aren't aware of this, then this will be new to you. So I can't just assume that people don't know what we're looking at here. So you may have to, let's see if I can, yes, here we go. Make this bigger. So this is a diagram of the lunation cycle. And so each phase of the moon is partitioned into 8 specific phases. And when you're talking about astrology as a tool to understand the living soul, basically, and the relationship between the two parts of ourselves that come into communion with each other, right? The masculine and feminine, the light and dark, and the sun and the moon. Each phase has its own set of principles and actions that we can utilize as a way to make sense of things around us. And so when you get to the full moon, as I said, this is a time where we clarify our purpose, illumine and fulfill, because we have over the first half of the lunar cycle, it has been very unconscious, right? It has been seeds that have been implanted and are germinating. And so there is a lot of struggle and moving forward and breaking down barriers and obstacles as they present themselves, and to analyze who we are and how we respond to these challenges. And so when we get to the full moon, our purpose is clarified, it's illumined, and our job is to fulfill it over the course of the next 2 weeks and the latter half of the lunar cycle. So it's almost more difficult even with that awareness. It's just kind of like when you wake up, you can't really go back to sleep. Even if you want to, you can kind of get away with a certain level of ignorance or, just not really taking responsibility for ourselves in the first half of a lunar cycle, for instance, because we're kind of operating in the darkness still and responding and reacting to things that show up. Once we get to the full moon and we kind of have this illumination, and it will be much more illuminated consciously because we're not eclipsed anymore with the full moon, we have a responsibility at this point to clarify our purpose and fulfill it. And so there's no going back from this point. So that does put the responsibility on each of us to be conscious and to project that awareness into the decisions we make and the actions that we take. So through the last half of the lunar cycle, you're going to have clarifying your purpose, and then you can see the disseminating moon is about distributing your values, right? Conveying your message. When we get to the last quarter moon, which in this instance will be Easter Sunday on the 20th. This is about reorienting and turning away, revising our thinking. And there is a significant transit that goes along with this third quarter moon that is really going to test, because it's not just a quarter moon, it's going to turn out to be a T square that we're going to address. And we will have to definitely revise our thinking, whether we want to or not, because of the energy and the Sabian symbols related to the degrees of that third quarter moon, which again is going to be on Easter Sunday. But if you want to think about it, what are the symbols related to that time period, right? It's the death and resurrection. And so there are things that we continue to need to let go of. And if you've gotten the last two energy readings, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it was spelled out in the reading pretty strongly about what we need to turn away from. Especially the first one that I did, what we need to turn away from, how we can reorient ourselves, revising our thinking. Because again, when our purpose is needed to be clarified, when we have our sense of when the subconscious is fully illuminated and we see that what is really operating under the surface, we have, like I said, that responsibility to consciously move forward. That doesn't mean that we don't have the opportunity to reorient. And that's what happens at the last quarter moon, is the reorientation. And I assure you, there will be lots of friction that will bring us into a crisis moment, which is always these quarter moons are always a crisis moment personally. And then we get into the balsamic moon, which is where we distill and transform and our consciousness mutates, right? We're not really activating anything new at that point. We are preparing for the next seed point of emergence, right? Which is the new moon, and we incarnate into a new being, emerge and project. So I just wanted to review this, and you can easily find this. You just type in lunation cycle into a search engine and you can find a graphic and go back and look at this to help you clarify things, or to be like, this is a stage where I want to do, kind of focus on this part. And the full moon is about clarifying your purpose. So, but we have the added element here of Chiron and the sun being conjunct as we're coming into this full moon, and then the full moon itself being in a conjunction with Spica. So I'd like to actually show the connection to Spica, where it is in the sky, what constellation we're looking at. So here we go. Hopefully. Share. Come back. Here we go. Sometimes this does not want to cooperate. There we go. All right, friends, so here is our Stellarium software. As I say every single time, Stellarium is a free program you can download, and you have your own personal planetarium that you can look at where everything is and get a sense of the actual sky, especially if you're into looking at the living sky. And it does seem like that I'm having a little bit of glitching here, keeping this open. So I won't keep it open for very long because it does take up a lot of space and processing power. I just want to show you that the full moon on the 12th will be conjunct the fixed star of Spica. And Spica is in the head of the grain of the Virgo constellation. So let's just exit out of that because that's clearly giving me a little bit of a fit here. But I did show it to you. That way you have some sort of visual here to, there we go, to reference. So what I'd also like to do is just give you a little bit of insight into this fixed star. Now, we talked about the starseed connection. I'm going to put on my blue blockers, actually, now that I'm looking at them and realizing I don't have my PP on. So let's see, dismiss. We're going to make sure that these tabs are not using extra resources. All right. I think we're good now. So we talked about the starseed connection, and again, that they're very rare starseeds. So if you are a Spica starseed, just know that this is very activating for you. And in fact, this will probably be a time for you as a person to really tap into that particular frequency that's part of your overall makeup as an individual here with that starseed connection. But if you were to look at some of the fixed star energy connected to Spica in general, I mean, this is a very good star. Now, it's right on our ecliptic, right? So often, planetary bodies, the sun and the moon, obviously, they're going to make direct connections to Spica in line of sight whenever they do come close to it in the zodiac sign of Libra, or if they're in the constellation of Virgo. Now, the star Arcturus, which many of us are aware of, which is a very prominent star, is at the same degree longitudinally, except it's north. So it's in the Boots constellation that's north. But there is a very strong connection between the two of them. So, but Spica is a very notable star. It has a very sweet disposition. It's got a lot of those qualities of Virgo that we recognize. There's a sense of, artistic appreciation. There's great honors. There's good fortune. There's good judgment, riches, right? If you think about the grain, right? If you think about what comes to fruition based on what we sow, you are looking at Spica. Okay, so it is one of the 15 Bohemian fixed stars, if you're familiar with those. That's a whole class of fixed stars that have really strong connections to the ancients, really. And its image is that of a bird, right? And we know, for those of you who have received the last two energy readings that I offer, you know that the bird has come through, different types of birds have come through, especially one around deep emotional healing. And with this Sun Chiron conjunction that's happening at this full moon, I mean, this is really the time where those wounds, even if they're past wounds, which they usually are with Chiron, they represent past wounds that oftentimes we keep open because we don't know how to be any other way. But I think with this full moon, it will really illuminate, that there's always a plan. And sometimes things feel like we're a victim. And there are plenty of times we've all been victimized, right? I mean, that's not to say that those things aren't true, right? That things happen to us, that we're in situations where we are victimized. We don't really have a choice, right? We didn't ask for these particular things to happen, but what the larger picture is with those particular events that we have been victimized is that we have the opportunity to develop a whole new viewpoint and a sense of inner strength, right? And we all can point to something in our lives where that is the case. And I've been personally working with something from past like childhood trauma that really came to my awareness, not the trauma itself, I've been working with that for a long time, but this particular dynamic really came to my awareness very recently of just like, it's not fair that these things happened to me and had such a deep and profound impact on how I moved through the world and the negative impact that it had until I started really healing. But the other side of that is because of that situation, I have developed a strength and a perspective that you can't get from anywhere else other than going through these types of traumas. And I'm not saying that we should want them. I'm just saying that it's revealed to us that we develop an extra set of capacities, right? And in order to reinforce us in our strength and our resilience, right? So there is incredible healing that is going to be part of this full moon and the 2 weeks following it, leading up to the new moon. But Spica in particular, one of the 15 Bohemian fixed stars, its image is of a bird, overcomes contentions, removes scarcity, right? There's just a lot of those themes about what are we bringing to fruition, right? It's all about not only what we sow, but how we cultivate it. And that makes a huge difference. And Spica is a big part of the actual riches that come forward from what we not only sow, but what we cultivate. So it's a very fortunate star. Like if you have this in your natal chart or like your draconic chart, if you have this that is prominent, it's a very fortunate star to have. And that's why, you don't see a lot of people who have this directly in their chart. So when they do, there's a lot of renown that goes along with it. And that usually comes not just from it falling out of the sky into your lap, but because there is a capacity to really cultivate and through your works and labors and your almost a sense of innocence, right? Virgo is the maiden, so it really kind of portends all of that type of stuff, and also to artistic ability, talents, musical talents, and a sense for literature, things like that. Virgo seems to be very, there's always this sense of like, kind of controlling and like really focused on details. And yes, analysis, a big part of Virgo in the sixth house, but there's also this beauty and this talent for artistry and music, because you need that type of meticulousness and attention to detail in order to really execute those types of artistic skills. So yes, if you have this in your chart and it's badly aspected, it can be a challenge. But we're talking here about a full moon. So as the star of the grain harvest, it's the provider of our material needs. And I know that this is a huge issue right now across the world stage based on things that are happening. And it does show up that way, though. So this is a word of warning to go with it. We only reap harvest if we have first sown the seed and cared for the fields. And what we reap, what has to last us. And all who labored in our fields until the next harvest is ready, right? This is coming from astrologyking.com. So he does not do so well from Spica, who reaps what he has not sown, or denies to others their share, right? So this backfires. Now, people who have this in their chart and it's well aspected and they are Spica starseed, they hardly are ever acting out in this negative way, right? But it is a warning. And I think that again, it's about what you have sown, what you have personally put into the situation that's going to have an impact on what you gather in terms of the harvest. And I think, again, being able to honestly to shine a spotlight on those wounds of self that Chiron and Sun and Aries are going to really highlight with their conjunction. I do feel like that it's going to reveal how that has generated a resilience and an inner strength that we couldn't get in any other way. So let's start looking at the chart itself and start going through our play-by-play here. So thank you for your continued attention and patience. And here we go. Time to share the chart here. So actually, let me do some modifications real quick before I do that. And that way we can just move. There we go. All right. So this is the chart for April 12th. This is our full moon in Libra in terms of Western or tropical astrology, right? Where the zodiac is a 30-degree portion of space that goes all the way around, starting with the vernal equinox. So as I said, look, Sun and Chiron in a conjunction, right, at the full moon. So the degree of their conjunction is, and this has a lot to do with the imagery of the thumbnail for this video, is a pregnant woman in light summer dress. It's about inner fulfillment. It's about the soul's basic anchorage in its own functioning, right? This has a lot to do with the ability to fulfill our desires almost exclusively it has to start from within, right? It can't, and again, we can't rely on the outside circumstances to fulfill those desires. It doesn't work that way. So this conjunction might feel like a spotlight illuminating those old wounds related to a sense of self, of independence. The inner child a lot of times is related to Aries as well. Maybe it's a past experience, right, where you felt powerless, where you felt dismissed, unable to assert yourself, and this the sun definitely amplifies this, right? And also the fact that it's in Aries, right? It kind of urges us to confront it head on. Aries is the ram. The ram is a male sheep. It literally rams its head into another into another ram. That's how they confront each other. Lots of animals do it, but that's where it gets its name is because of it ramming its head. So the sun illuminating this is really urging us to confront it head on rather than let it fester in the background. Ooh, boy, I will tell you what, there have been a number of things that have come up for me symbolically, shamanically in my own life and in just the way that I move through the world that has really brought this up. We can't afford to let it fester in the background, honestly. Aries doesn't mess around. It's very outward, and it's a do it now kind of energy. So with these two coming together, there may be a push to take action. You might feel a nudge to take action with this conjunction, whether that's standing up for yourself, whether that's starting something new, or maybe honestly just addressing a pain point that's been avoided. And it is easy to avoid these pain points, right? Instead of just facing them head on. I mean, we all do this to a certain extent, and we all also can speak from experience that I would imagine that most of us can speak from experience that when we have done this before in the past, it usually does not go the way we want. And then we actually get an incredible amount of relief when we just address the issue, even when it's really difficult. But this can be a time of empowerment, and I do feel that really strongly. I mean, the gift of Chiron is turning wounds into wisdom, honestly. So the sun lights the way, and remember, the sun is exalted. It's powerful in Aries. So again, clarity about past struggles, how they shaped your strength and purpose. This is exactly what I just talked about. It's not comfortable. It's like resetting a broken bone, right? But it's a chance to reclaim a part of yourself that's been sidelined. And the full moon is going to just reinforce this so much more in terms of how we feel, that extra strengthening, that ability to develop new modes of response, right? We don't have to default back into the old victim mentality of how we've responded to things in the past. We're not going to stop having challenges, even going into this new phase, however you want, the golden age, into the awakening, new earth, whatever, however you identify it, as we come, kind of shake off the hangover of coming out of the Kali Yuga and moving into a much more enlightened state of humanity. Whatever it is, like, we're still going to be facing challenges. It's just part of the human condition, but this is about developing new modes of response. And if you go back to the energy of the solar eclipse and the Sabian symbol, right? Revision of attitude at the beginning of a new cycle. This full moon illuminates for each of us personally that those old wounds that we felt disempowered, where we felt we weren't listened to, where we felt sidelined, has allowed us to develop new modes of response to these challenges, right? And then you have the moon conjunct Spica as it's being fully illuminated by this Sun Chiron conjunction, and we see the fruits of that labor. Now, not everybody, is going to like the fruits of that labor because they have been avoiding this pain point, whatever it is. But this is a really potent moment of healing that has been kind of building and building now for a hot minute, and it's going to really just open up with this. And again, this is the opportunity where we clarify our purpose, right? And so from here, the moon will, obviously move through Libra, and we're going to be moving from that weekend into the third quarter moon and Easter weekend, which is going to be very intense. Now, At this point, Mercury has already stationed direct, and in fact, it's going to meet with Neptune at 0 degrees Aries right after this full moon. But also, along with this full moon, as you're going to see here, is that Venus stations direct right at 25 degrees Pisces. Now, I've talked about this degree a lot because it has a very definitive, very easy to wrap your head around Sabian symbol, the purging of the priesthood, right? The religious organizations that overcome their corrupting influences, the purification of society down to the spiritual level. We're talking about Pisces here. Now, with Saturn being here, and having all of those connections to Uranus and to Mars on the 4th of April and everything that's been transpiring, this is part of the purge. And when Venus stations direct at this full moon, you can bet that yes, it's been very limiting and been very institutional when Saturn was sitting at this degree directly. With Venus, it's going to be way more personal in the body, in the resources that we value. Venus is about what we value, the resources, projects, relationships, right? Security and comfort. In Pisces, it's much more connected to the broader humanitarian aspect, and we can be very inspired, right? If you go back to the energy reading, folks that have got it, and watch that video, the muse, right? The muse is where we're anchored. And Venus and Pisces got lots of muse energy to it because we become creative. You know, Venus does represent our artistic style and tastes and our capacity to create artistically. Where Saturn, like I said, was very institutionalized and very limiting and kind of put the foot down about this, Venus, it's going to be that much more personal, but it's going to be very inspiring in some ways when this catharsis rolls through. And this degree of 25 Pisces is the ability of the soul to intervene in order to achieve that catharsis. And for anybody who has gone through any type of cathartic moment, which is probably everybody listening to this, then you know that that is a profound moment of release. And so, yeah, it might be uncomfortable. Yes, it might be overwhelming in some ways, but the fact that Venus is stationing direct right here makes a huge, I just feel like this is a huge, activation. Now, of course, we're at starseed degrees, right? Anything from 25, 26, 27 degrees with an orb of 1 degree on either side is a starseed origin. And it has different placements, but Pisces is no different, okay? So I think a lot of people who are identified as starseed or as light worker, even if there's nothing specific in your personal life that you're like, wow, I'm really purging this, you're still purging things through you as, as a representative, as being awake and part of this collective because you are directly linked. And that's the thing about Pisces. There are no boundaries here. We are one and the same with everyone else. And so the purge that's going through society is going to go through each of us in a very personal and visceral way when it comes to Venus. But again, the healing capacity right now is off the charts. And this is another piece of this cathartic moment that is going to sweep through all those things that we value. And if we are connected to that muse, that inspiration, there can be some really beautiful things that come out of this. Okay. So this is at the full moon itself. So as we go through the week after this, so that first quarter, the first quarter of the full moon. So really you're looking at the full moon phase into the disseminating moon phase. So you may find yourself in a position where you're sharing, you're conveying, you're disseminating your own message. The next big thing after this full moon is really when Mercury comes into Aries and then meets Neptune on the 17th, which is Thursday. And then we come into the Easter weekend, right? Good Friday, and then onto Easter, and the sun comes into Taurus, and it's going to be pretty intense. There's no doubt about it based on what I'm looking at least. So when we get to the 17th, like I said, Mercury is going to come, you can see it right here. Mercury comes into Aries, and then right at this transition from the 16th to the 17th, Wednesday to Thursday, Eastern Standard Time, you're going to see this conjunction in Aries of Mercury and Neptune. So they had been conjunct in Pisces the last two times because of the retrograde and the recent ingress of Neptune into Aries, right? Neptune in Pisces, right? We could still be the victim essentially, and then Neptune moving into Aries, right? Now the hero's journey at the spiritual level really begins here. So when these two come together, it can really impact your thinking and your communications, and it really just depends. It just depends on how you're working with this energy, right? In its highest manifestation, this is very accurate in terms of intuitive and psychic perception, right? You're really processing spiritual information, especially when we're talking about the first degree of Aries, about what is emerging, what is emerging out of the formless, undifferentiated divine matrix into a desire and a potentiality that will come out of that desire. So the other side of this, though, the negative expression of this transit is the fear and paranoia and the confusion and the irrationality that comes about. And so there's underhanded tactics. And, with there's a visionary quality here with Mercury and Neptune together, and there's creative ideas, pursuing your intuitive hunches, right? There's confidence and enthusiasm with this Aries energy. Again, a great time for artistic endeavors, spiritual exploration, pitching bold concepts. That's a pretty cool one too. Think of it as a cosmic green light to let your imagination just run wild and speak it into existence, whatever it is that you are looking through. And again, this comes off of the full moon where we're clarifying our purpose, right? But there is, even in Aries, Neptune still has a very foggy influence because it's moving direct, right? Wait till the retrograde this summer. It'll be a different story. So it can kind of blur your clarity a little bit. And Aries kind of, there is no contemplation with Aries, right? You're just kind of going. You're just acting, right? It is. So you could jump to conclusions very easily here because your clarity is kind of being blurred by the Neptune influence, right? Because this is it's vast, right? And Neptune, smoke and mirrors, right? The propaganda, the agents of propaganda, the media communication could feel poetic, but it also vague, and you might encounter misunderstandings if you're not double checking things. And Aries is very impatient, so I also get this sense that people want it now. They're feeling this inspiration, there's a cathartic moment. They're like, wow, this healing, it's time to move forward. Just remember that we're still coming off of the eclipse that was in Aries. So it's not to say that there's nothing to be dealt with, nothing to do here, and gives you a cosmic green light, as I said earlier, to let your imagination kind of just go. But you don't necessarily, you might feel kind of impatient, and you might want to push something before it's fully formed. And I would say, please be patient. That is definitely a quality of the Virgo South node that can really, work in our favor. It doesn't mean that we're defaulting back into that space. It's just a mastery at a soul level, that South node of the moon in Virgo right now. And that's what propels us forward, a sense of real patience and mastery. It's a moment to lean into your intuition and creativity, but it's okay to be a little skeptical. You don't have to act on it and have everything done. If you're starting something new, you can let the inspiration guide you, but give Mercury a chance to be Mercury, right? To really look at the map, make sure that everything is worked out and that you are aware of all the details, so you don't get caught in something and you're like, oh man, I missed that, because you were so caught up in the big picture of it and coming out of the ocean that you weren't necessarily considering that nothing's a sure thing, right? So when we come into the Easter weekend, it's going to get, wow. Just be, this is one of those things where I would say, buckle up. I know that it kind of gets, again, it's like the storm imagery or the buckle up, it just gets so overplayed and people just put it out there all the time, and it turns out not to be actually that moment. And so anybody does this work, it definitely, that's how you interpret the energy. But I will say that this particular energy really does feel like a buckle up. And I personally have been getting a lot of storm imagery in dreams, in dream time. And that's not something that happens often. And I don't overplay that imagery very often at all, if at all, because again, it's kind of used as clickbait, oh, the storm, the calm before the storm, the eye of the storm. But I have been getting that, and I've been getting a lot of, and I said this on the reading too, the energetic reading, and there's been a lot of chatter on both ends, right? So cutting through the noise and really being able to access your intuition is very important, but it has been loud, and very, the symbolism might be a little cryptic if you don't understand your intuitive language as well yet. That's just takes time and practice, honestly. Nobody is really more psychic than anybody else. It's just a matter of, understanding the language and interpreting the frequency, and that takes practice. That's all. It's been loud and it's been very direct. So, but there may be some interpretation that you have to work on, and the internet's great for that, right? Look into those symbols in your dreams that seem really cryptic and strange, especially if they are animals, or other types of symbols that you don't necessarily, you're not engaging with in your waking life, but you're like, whoa, that just came out of nowhere. That's important. Pay attention to it, because Spirit is always talking, never leaves. It's always here. It's part of us. And so that, in order to be in harmony with the divine plan, always, you just have to tune into it, and you can guide and direct yourself. But there's a lot of noise right now, obviously, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of influence to keep us from, eye on the prize, right? Whatever that is for us, not getting pulled into the drama. So here's the thing, the 18th, Mars comes into Leo, so the energy of that action and that boldness is going to get that much more dramatic. Okay. Yes, Mars moving through Cancer and having this retrograde from Leo back into Cancer has been pretty intense. And Mars has been acting out of our feels and our sense of safety and a sense of emotional belonging, right? The home and family that Cancer represents, and our internal waters, you know what I mean? So has been acting out of those feels. But coming into Leo, it's going to get very dramatic again. So Mars coming into Leo on Good Friday is going to kind of really start this process. And, Good Friday is the representative of the death part of the death resurrection cycle. The 19th, which is Saturday, this is when the sun comes into Taurus. So it's at the last degree of Aries and then comes into Taurus. And at the same time, this is when Mars comes into a trine with Neptune, 0 degrees and 0 degrees. Now, when you have 0 degrees, first off, in terms of starseed markings and starseed origins, and even just galactic astrology in general, these 0 degrees are like the crack between the worlds, right? And it's very distilled and very powerful, just like any type of narrow gateway is very powerful, but it's a crack between worlds. And so to have this square, or I'm sorry, to have, well, it's not only going to be a trine, but there will be a square with the sun and Mars on Easter Sunday, right? And a T-square, actually, because the moon will be in Aquarius. We'll get there. So first, though, the Mars-Neptune trine, right? 0 degrees of fire signs. You might feel unusually motivated on this day to really chase those dreams of confidence and fueled by a sense of purpose. So when Mercury and Neptune come together, and you kind of have this aha moment of just like, oh, I mentally can get it now, like what's emerging out of the undifferentiated primal soup here, at the most vast, broad spectrum level with Neptune. Then you have Mars come in a trine with Neptune, which is a very harmonious, very flowing type of transit. And then you get really motivated, right? And 0 degrees Leo is like blood rushing to the head, right? You're just like, whoa. It's a Kundalini awakening, right? And so you have it in a trine to Neptune, and I think that you can really feel that touch of divine inspiration in that moment. So creative pursuits Anything that especially lets you stand out and perform as a Leo. So Leo people, there's some notable Leo people out there in the public realm. Someone in a very key leadership position is a Leo rising. Creative pursuits, especially those that let you stand out or perform, could get a big boost, right? Art, theater, anything that lets your inner fire like glow. It's very natural though, because it's a trine, and your actions align with your intuition or higher ideals, right? You could think about that with Neptune, your higher ideals. So it makes it easier to act on your gut feelings or take bold leaps of faith. There's nothing wrong with that, right? You just have to understand that the flip side of this is that you get carried away with Mars and Leo. Thankfully, we've already been in this territory with Mars, and some homework, if you're interested, is to go back and look at the last time Mars was here, right? If you look at a chart, go back and look at the time period, take inventory. What was I doing? Oh, what else was going on, right? This is a way you can use astrology for your own process. So that would be my recommendation, right? Go back and see when was the last time Mars was in Leo. I mean, I could tell you, but that would kind of defeat the purpose of you learning how to do this, right? And this, again, goes into the main message, which is you have to trust your own intuition. We have got to step back from, and I think a lot of people are doing this, stepping back from just, blindly absorbing what people tell us is happening or not happening, because so many people have just been wrong, right? And they just, are basically farming for your money by prophesying about things. And, learning to read astrology by listening. That's how I did it, is just listening to astrologers. And I learned how to do it for myself. So that's what I'm trying to do here, is explain how to do it for yourself rather than just tell you what's going to happen. That's divination. And I don't actually think that that's a useful tool. And some people, you would argue that that's actually, kind of manipulating the system. Anyway, so the flip side of this trine is that, you could get really ego-driven, and Neptune, again, is blurring the lines between reality and fantasy, and so you can overestimate what's possible or charge into something without, again, double-checking the details. So this Mercury and Mars both coming into fire signs and having these connections with Neptune is something we really have to be aware of. The key to channel this energy into something tangible, because Neptune is very dreamy. Even in Aries, it's going to, be very just like fantasy, potentially fantasy oriented, but it can inspire your Mars courage. And remember, Aries is the home territory of Mars. So there's a little bit of familiarity here that Mars can be like, hey, at least I understand. We understand where that initiatory kind of initial spark comes from in Neptune. And even if it is dreamy and fantasy, we know that there's something tangible that is meant to come out of it, right? So inspire their courage without losing sight of reality here is a good way to think about this, right? It's again, acting on your passionate, inspired desires, whatever they are, right? It's great for chasing what lights you up, and that's a big part of Leo and the fifth house in astrology. What lights you up, right? What are you passionate about? Especially if it involves creativity, especially if it involves leadership or a personal quest, right? We're talking again about the hero's journey at the most spiritual level, archetypal level. Like Joseph Campbell's type of hero's journey with Neptune coming into Aries. Just keep one foot in reality. That's all I'm going to say. And it will be a little bit easier with the sun coming into Taurus, because that is reality. Taurus and the second house is the objective reality. It is the the ground beneath your feet. It is the body that you inhabit and all of the anatomy that it is comprised of, right? It is the natural elements and forces at work, right? Or just in their natural state, right? That's what Taurus is. So sun coming into Taurus at the same time, I think will help, excuse me, especially because the sun does rule Leo. So I think it'll be a little bit easier to keep one foot in reality, hopefully. Now, Easter Sunday has got a lot of shit going on, I'm not going to lie. So we have a third quarter moon, and if you remember that third quarter, this is where we reorient and turn away from that which is not going to fulfill our purpose, right? It usually comes from a crisis moment. But also with that day, we have Venus is going to be in a sextile to Uranus. This is really going to kind of give that inspiration to have a sudden urge to break away from routine, and really be a gentle nudge towards something fresh with Venus sextile Uranus, which is really nice. It's not as bold and dramatic. It's so much, especially with Venus in Pisces, and Uranus is in Venus's home territory in Taurus. And so it'll be a lot gentler and something that feels a little bit better and that is not necessarily chaotic, but something that is nudging us to kind of break free of something stale. New connections that feel oddly faded, but there's also like artistic breakthroughs as well. And just, quirky kind of out of the box shifts in how you handle things like resources or even a sense of self-worth, because Venus represents that as well. It's very subtle, right? It's subtle, but it's very palpable with Venus sextile Uranus, especially in these feminine signs with water and earth. Along with that, you're going to see that Mercury is in a sextile to Pluto at the same time. Mercury at 4 degrees Aries. And you can also see that the sun or the moon is coming into Aquarius, and that's going to build this square, and it's creating a T-square with Mars and Leo. And whenever we have a T-square, as I've said many times, you want to look at the ghost point that finishes out the full grand square, because that's going to give you an indication of the piece you might be missing in order to identify the full range of frustration, right? Otherwise, you kind of get pulled into the point of the T-square. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but if you don't see the ghost point, which is the 2 degrees of Scorpio, you kind of miss the whole picture. And there are blind spots, basically, that you don't see are still trapping you. And in the case of this, with 2 degrees Scorpio, I would say that this goes back to surrendering the past, right? And we will be reminded, there'll be it's a nostalgic feeling of where we're coming out of. But the reality here with this T-square and the square, this is the crisis moment of the third quarter moon. We're going to have to reorient and turn away. And it's going to be that much harder to do when we have this kind of, it's like actually 2 degrees Scorpio is like this broken bottle of perfume, right? The bottle's broken. You're not putting it back together. But what's escaping is the smell, the sweet smell. And we know that smell is a very deep sense. It is connected to memory and experience quite directly. And so, we know that there's change. We know that the bottle's broken. We know that there is a past that we have to surrender. But what was encompassed in that is something that's going to trigger some memories and nostalgic memories as well. And I think we have to be aware of that so that it's not a blind spot with everything that might really rapidly shift, because 2 degrees Taurus and 2 degrees of Aquarius both are about storms, unexpected storms or electrical storms. It is about having the resilience to face adversity. The fact that a storm or lightning, for instance, is a natural rebalancing of charge of the atmosphere, right? And those are unexpected. They tend to be very destructive. We don't always like them, right? Because they are rapid and incredibly powerful. But if we don't realize that could trigger these memories of what's past, I just feel like that the Mars element in all of this is going to be very dramatic. And see, the thing about Leo too, and the drama, it's not a negative term. It's really meant to represent that there's such a strong expulsion of feeling and passion, right? And so it's either joy or it's grief or it's anger. And with Mars involved, it could very easily be anger. And I do see that it could be very difficult on Easter Sunday. But then, like I said, you have Venus and you have Mercury both in a sextile to Pluto and Venus in a sextile to Uranus. These are very supportive energies for transformation that are not overly chaotic and dramatic. And Mercury and Pluto in a sextile, they can really work together well if you lean into it, right? Powerful, insightful conversations can happen, uncovering hidden truths with a fearless edge. And I think a lot of that stuff is going to be uncovered for us, and the choice to know about it is going to be ours. And this type of sextile with Mercury and Pluto is one of those moments where we can actually go deeper in problem solving, research, mental breakthrough moments, right? And Aries, fuels our confidence. And Aquarius is much more visionary, right? So we keep looking forward, and we are not necessarily getting pulled into the fear, but being motivated to really go deeper into the underlying structures and have those insightful conversations. And Venus and Uranus in their sextile is a gentle nudge towards, something fresh, realizing that, we can be that there is inspiration or a shift in how we handle things. I do really like it on top of this Sun square Mars, right? Which is along with the Sun or the Moon in Aquarius creating that T square. Just Sun square Mars in general is like, a tug of war, stubborn determination and dramatic impatience, right? And so there's a lot of frustration that can come out of this, right? And there could be a standoff between that stubbornness and that flair for drama, and it can amplify it. So, but it can be very productive. See, there's always a spectrum here of how we can deal with these really difficult energies. There's something that can be productive from this tension, okay? Because Taurus gives you endurance, right? And of course, Leo, there's that Mars in Leo gives incredible confidence, right? Maybe too much confidence, but that's not necessarily a terrible thing, right? It's kind of like David and Goliath, right? I mean, David really had no business being so confident, except the fact that he knew that he was completely backed up and supported, and was led to do this by God directly. So if you channel this into something tangible, right? This Sun square Mars that we're looking at and this T square, you might surprise yourself with what you can pull off, right? You believe it and it can happen. The key to balance is, just don't be reckless. You don't want to bulldoze ahead recklessly, but don't get stuck in your ways. And I think there'll be more momentum to pull us out of being stuck than not. It'll be, again, the choice to lean into that and really have those powerful conversations and research and problem solving, or people will just double down on things, and that's not really gonna work out too well ultimately. So coming out of Easter weekend, and coming into the last quarter, right, is the Sun's going to square Pluto, and Venus is going to meet Saturn, and then the Mars-Pluto opposition will be exact. And by the end of this lunar cycle, Mercury will have exited its retrograde shadow, which means it's going to return to the point of its retrograde, which is the same degree of the eclipse, right? 10 degrees of Aries. So by the time we get to the end of April, we're going to have there's going to be a lot of confrontation, and there's going to be a confrontation, especially the Sun square Pluto. Oh boy, a confrontation between the desire for control and comfort and the structural upheaval that Pluto and Aquarius represents, right? There's going to be lots of power struggles, and it might be out there and it might be in your own life. You got to know where Taurus and Aquarius are in your chart. But I would say once we're going to have this crisis moment at Easter, and then what comes out of that is these power struggles, right? Here we see it right here, Sun square Pluto. And again, Pluto in Aquarius, I mean, this could very easily be out in the world, that we're just kind of, dealing with the power struggle because we want to personally be comfortable and have a sense of control over ourselves. And we want to hold on to what's tangible and familiar, and I just don't see how that could possibly, how there's anything left tangible and familiar by the time we get to the end of April. And I'm not saying, I have no idea what it's going to be. But Pluto in Aquarius really demands that we let go of outdated structures for the sake of progress. And some people are really having a hard time with that. Some people are not in agreement with where that progress is going. Like, we all have our own work to do around these things. But there is definitely a tug of war starting Easter weekend that continues into this last quarter of the lunar cycle. And there's a resistance to change in our routines, in our finances. It's already building right now. And it's clashing with a deeper urge to break free, right? We want to break free of Wall Street, guys, right? And so but the struggle here, and the struggle will continue throughout the rest of the month of April, is that the comfortability of making this change and moving into a new financial system, whatever it is really, is really having an impact on people. So, and there are big societal shifts, a Sun square Pluto like this, big societal shifts, right? Economic tensions, debate over technology's role in our lives. You know that like AI is not going away, right? Robotics is not going away. So we have to figure out, each of us personally and as a society, how we're going to make the most of this. The key here is that the square demands action. There's no resolving a square other than leaning into it and growing and evolving as a result of the tensions. Pluto's intensity might bring out your own control issues that you didn't even know you had, right? And this goes back to this full moon. It's like, when you realize that everything you need is within you, and you always feel fulfilled when you tap into the source within you, then it allows us to kind of rethink what security actually means, right? There's no gentleness to this. I think the only gentleness to any of Easter weekend and beyond is Venus sextile Uranus. It's a little bit of a nudge, but it's not nearly as dramatic. But Venus will conjunct Saturn right after this on the 24th. So that's a reality check. That's a huge reality check on the 24th of April, when Venus and Saturn come into a conjunction, right? But the thing about the reality check like that is just makes you more serious about your relationships. It might prompt a reality check, but you could feel the need to refine and define your boundaries, right? But that's also a time to commit more deeply, evaluate whether certain relationships are sustainable long term. You might be more cautious about expressing your feelings, or on the other side, there's emotional maturity that's developing. And I think that's incredible, especially the degree that they're conjunct at 28 Pisces, right? A fertile garden under the light of the full moon. This is about abundance that's tailored to the individual's needs. And I think this is just going to be a reality check of what that is for each of us, and a sense of real creative discipline. Saturn's presence might really push us to refine those projects for ourselves, and giving form to what otherwise are just dreams. That's the good thing about Saturn. And it highlights what we really value, right? And let go again of what's superficial or unrealistic. Yeah, Saturn can bring a sobering effect, and and stripping away illusions, which is the whole realm of Pisces, right? I mean, Venus will happily stay in that place, right? As long as there's a sense of creativity and being inspired, she'll definitely stay in the world of illusion. And Saturn's just like, no, we really have to be realistic and do this reality check about what our abundance really is, and what our relationships are. They sustainable? Is it time to start making deeper commitments? Is there emotional maturity developing? I think this is a great transit if you're ready for these things. And then on the 26th, Mercury comes out of shadow, and then the Mars-Pluto opposition becomes exact. And this, another one of those tensions between individual will and broader social forces. Mars in Leo wants to take charge. It wants to shine. It wants to assert itself with confidence, right? And Pluto in Aquarius is digging into deeper structural changes, working behind the scenes to shift power dynamics or challenge the status quo. And so this opposition can feel like a battle between your own personal desire to stand out and a need to conform to the bigger systems, which is Aquarius. And Leo in Aquarius is the performer and the audience, the heart and the cardiovascular system. They need each other. They're one in the same system, but they are also distinctly different. So again, more power struggle with Mars opposite Pluto, either within yourself or with others, institutions, authority figures. Definitely power struggles, because Pluto and Mars both rule the same sign, Scorpio, which is about power. So in a different sign, it's going to express itself a little differently, but ultimately the power struggle is going to be there. The clash with those disruptive urges or the revolution. There can be breakthroughs or breakdowns. It really just depends. So woohoo, guys, it's going to get even. You thought May is going to be a whole different ball of wax, I'll tell you that much. But March Madness ain't got nothing on what happens in April and what's been happening in April. So it's just going to get that much more intense. But the full moon ultimately is a moment of healing. And the healing, I think, comes from the realization that we don't have to be victims anymore. Right? And maybe we've been victimized in the past and we have felt unseen, unheard, dismissed, sidelined. And we don't have to respond in the same way. And in fact, it's because we've gone through those types of events or situations, either personally or collectively, that now we have this inner mode of strengthening that allows us to respond to situations differently. And this is going to have a big impact on what it is that we cultivate. We reap what we sow and cultivate. We have to take care of what we are sowing. Yes, nature does a lot of the work, but we also have to be part of taking care of the process and nurturing it. And if we don't realize, if we don't take advantage of this moment here to realize what we've been through and how it's developed a part of ourselves that's more resilient, then it's going to be really difficult when those unexpected storms come raging through, and we have a really hard time letting go of what we have to turn away from. Right? And everybody's going to have, everybody's at the different part of their journey. The best thing you can do is just be, forgiving of yourself, being compassionate towards other people, knowing that everybody has their own soul contracts, and assert your boundaries where they need to be, and just realize there's going to be a lot of power struggles finishing out April. So my friends, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate all of you so very much. Certainly, if you need to reach out, you have any questions, you can comment on this video. You can email me. That's in the description box below. Stay tuned for the transition of my membership site. And if you are interested in getting a complimentary energy reading at the, probably around Easter weekend, you might want to sign up for my email list, accessible through my homepage of my website. And for those of you who are currently subscribed or members through Subscribestar, thank you. You're really helping me cover some administrative costs right now. And so I hope to be able to move everybody over to the new member site by the end of the month and streamline everything, and we'll keep rolling. So I hope everyone's doing well. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other the best you can. Thank you for being here. I really do appreciate all of you so very much. Au revoir.